Her words hung in the air between us, heavy and sharp, shattering the comfortable Sunday afternoon silence. "I would," she said, her voice quiet but unwavering, each word a stone dropped into the still pool of my complacency. "If you'd just ask." Hello everyone, and welcome to Hidden Love Stories. Have you ever said something as a joke, only to have the reply change the entire landscape of your life? That's the unnerving reality at the heart of our story today. If you believe in the power of unspoken feelings and the terrifying moments that force them into the light, make sure you subscribe and give this video a thumbs up. It truly helps us bring more stories like this to you. And if you've ever found yourself completely stunned by someone's honesty, press 1 in the comments below. My name is Leo, and I'm 28 years old. For my entire life, I've been tethered to this small, sleepy town in Missouri, a place where the seasons change more than the people do. I run an appliance repair shop, or rather, I am the appliance repair shop. It's not a glamorous life, but there's a certain solidness to it. I'm the man people call when their world stops spinning, literally in the case of a washing machine, or when the furnace gives up the ghost on the coldest night of the year. My hands are calloused, perpetually smelling faintly of grease and metal, but they're good hands. They fix things, they restore order. It's a language I understand, a broken part, a clear solution. I live in a modest one-story rental on a street lined with oak trees that have probably been here longer than the town itself. It's the kind of neighborhood where you know the mailman by name, and the rhythm of your neighbors' lives becomes a subtle soundtrack to your own. And then there's Clara. She lives across the street and 2 doors down. At 31, she's a nurse at the local clinic, a veteran of a quiet divorce, with no children to fill the rooms of her small house. For 2 years, she's been a fixed point in my daily orbit. Our acquaintance began with the simple currency of neighborly life. A nod while taking out the trash, a wave over the fence as I wrestled with my lawnmower. Slowly, those silent acknowledgments blossomed into casual chats, which then deepened into long, meandering conversations that felt as natural as breathing. There was an ease with her, a comfortable silence that never felt empty. We talked about her long shifts, my frustrating jobs, the ridiculous town gossip. It was easy, safe. It was last Saturday, a day painted with the pale gold of late spring, when my phone buzzed with her name. Her water heater had died. She'd confessed, with a laugh in her voice, that she'd waged a valiant but losing battle against it with a wrench and a handful of YouTube tutorials, finally surrendering before she turned her laundry room into an indoor swimming pool. "I'll be over after my shift," I'd told her, the words leaving my lips without a second thought. It was nothing really, just a busted pilot light, a common ailment for a heater of its age. 20 minutes of tinkering, the familiar click and whoosh of the flame catching, and her house had hot water again. As a thank you, she offered me coffee. We settled onto her small back porch, a space defined by a single crooked step and a collection of wind chimes that sang a constant metallic tune with every whisper of a breeze. The afternoon was warm, quiet, a perfect pocket of stillness in a busy world. We talked for what felt like hours, the conversation flowing effortlessly, touching on everything and nothing. She recounted a story about a patient at the clinic who, despite a painfully broken leg, had tried to flirt with her. Then she described how her dog had woken her at 3 a.m., convinced the low hum of the refrigerator was a sign of an impending apocalypse. I laughed, a deep, genuine sound, and she laughed with me, her eyes crinkling at the corners. It was that same rhythm, that easy cadence we'd always fallen into. Then, in a lull in the conversation, I looked at her, really looked at her. The sunlight caught the stray strands of hair that had escaped her bun, turning them to threads of gold. A wave of something unnameable washed over me, and without thinking, I let a stupid, careless joke slip out. "You know," I smiled, "you should get married." It was a throwaway line, the kind of meaningless filler you use to plug a silence that feels just a little too profound. But Clara didn't laugh. Her smile faded, and she looked down at her hands. Then her gaze lifted to meet mine again, clear and startlingly direct. And then she said it, her voice barely above a whisper but carrying the weight of a confession. "I would," she said, "if you'd just ask." Time stopped. My breath caught in my throat, and I felt a dizzying lurch in my stomach like an elevator car in free fall. My hand was frozen around my coffee cup, the ceramic suddenly feeling foreign and heavy. What do you do? What do you say when a joke is met with the raw, unvarnished truth? She held my gaze for another second, a second that stretched into an eternity, before she stood up, breaking the spell. "I need to fold laundry," she said, her tone almost normal, as if she hadn't just detonated a bomb in the middle of our peaceful afternoon. And with that, she turned and walked back inside. I remained on her porch for a few minutes, maybe longer, the wind chimes suddenly sounding harsh and mocking. I mechanically finished my coffee, the cold liquid a stark contrast to the heat flushing my face. I placed the mug on the small table, gave a single, idiotic nod to the empty doorway, and left. For 3 days, she was a ghost. I didn't see her in her yard, didn't catch a glimpse of her through the window. And in her absence, that moment on the porch played in my mind on an endless, torturous loop. It wasn't just her words, it was the look in her eyes as she'd said them. That wasn't a witty comeback or a playful jab. It felt like an offering. Like she had been holding those words inside her for a very, very long time, just waiting for the door to be cracked open enough for them to escape. Sleep became a stranger. It wasn't a frantic, obsessive spiral of thoughts, but a low, persistent hum in the back of my mind that wouldn't switch off. "I would if you'd just ask." The phrase would surface at the most random moments, while I was brushing my teeth, tying my boots, or diagnosing a faulty compressor in someone's Sub-Zero. I didn't know what to do with it. Part of me, the part that craved the safety of our old, easy dynamic, wanted to shove it back in a box and pretend it never happened. But her expression, the sheer vulnerability in it, made that impossible. I didn't text. I didn't call. I consciously avoided walking by her house, even breaking my subconscious habit of checking to see if her porch light was on at night. It wasn't fear, not exactly. It was the unnerving feeling of being truly seen. It was as if I'd spent 2 years thinking I was standing behind one-way glass, only to realize she'd been looking right at me the entire time. By Tuesday, the 4 walls of my house felt like they were closing in. I sought refuge in my work, burying my confusion under a mountain of service calls. A refrigerator for an elderly couple, a finicky thermostat, a man who swore his toaster was possessed by a malevolent spirit. I said yes to every job, welcoming the distraction of broken things I knew how to fix. Then, on Thursday afternoon, as I was wiping a thick layer of grease from my hands at the shop counter, the bell above the door chimed. My head snapped up. It was her, Clara. She was in her blue scrubs, her hair pulled back in a messy but efficient knot. She looked exhausted, carrying the specific weariness of a nurse who has seen more in one shift than most people see in a month. Yet she managed a small smile. "Hey," she said, a little wave accompanying the word. "Hey," I replied, my voice tight. I remained behind the counter, a barrier of my own making. "I need a power strip," she explained, staying near the door. The one in my kitchen decided to die and took my toaster and coffee maker with it. I grabbed one from the display wall behind me. $10, I said. She handed me a $20 bill. As I fumbled in the register for her change, she shook her head. Keep it. A silence fell between us, thick and charged. It was the kind of quiet that only exists when something fundamental has shifted between two people. An unspoken truth that took up all the oxygen in the room. I wasn't trying to mess with you, she said suddenly, her voice soft. I looked up from the register. The other day, she continued, shrugging slightly. On the porch, what I said, I wasn't joking, but I wasn't expecting anything either. I just said it. I wrestled with a dozen different replies, my mind a chaotic mess. I settled for the safest, most non-committal word I could find. Okay, I said finally. She looked at me, her eyes searching my face for something more, for some sign of life. When I offered nothing else, she gave a small, resigned nod. It wasn't a look of anger or hurt, but of finality, like she had extended her hand and, finding it unmet, was now pulling it back for good. She turned to leave. At the door, she paused and looked back over her shoulder. You're allowed to want something, Leo, she said, her words a gentle but firm arrow aimed right at my heart. Even if it scares you. Then she was gone, leaving me behind the counter, clutching a $10 bill I hadn't earned, feeling the profound and sickening weight of a missed opportunity. That night, the silence in my house was deafening. I sat on my own porch, a cold beer in my hand, listening to the crickets and the distant rumble of a truck on the highway. Her words echoed in my head. She hadn't thrown herself at me. She hadn't issued an ultimatum. She had simply offered a moment of pure, unadulterated honesty, hoping I would be brave enough to meet her there. And I had failed. I had hidden behind my counter and my one-word answers, and the silence now felt like my own personal failure. The next morning, I saw her car was gone when I walked to my truck. Already at the clinic, already saving lives while I couldn't even save myself from my own cowardice. I thought about leaving a note on her door, something simple, something to reopen the connection, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. I drove to work and sat in the parking lot for 10 minutes, just staring at the steering wheel, feeling like I was waiting for a different version of myself to show up and take control. If you've ever felt paralyzed by fear, unable to take the step you know you need to take, hit that like button to let us know we're not alone. And remember to subscribe so you don't miss how Leo's story unfolds. Friday arrived under a blanket of gray, overcast skies, bringing with it a damp, unseasonable chill that seeped into your bones. I was off work, a last-minute cancellation giving me an empty day I didn't want. Normally, a free day would be a gift, a chance to relax. But today, it felt like a spotlight, illuminating the one thing I couldn't ignore any longer. I knew where I had to go. It was just after 9:30 a.m. When I walked down the street toward her house, I wasn't carrying flowers or wearing my best clothes, just jeans, a gray hoodie, and work boots that had seen far better days. My hands were shoved deep in my pockets, balled into nervous fists. I hesitated on her porch for a full minute, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs, staring at her front door as if I could will it to open through sheer force of anxiety. It didn't. So I knocked. The door opened a few seconds later, revealing Clara in sweats, her hair in a loose bun, her face free of makeup. She didn't look surprised to see me. Just patient. "Hey," she said quietly. "Hey," I replied. "Everything okay?" she asked, her brow furrowed with concern. "Not really," I admitted, the honesty feeling both terrifying and liberating. She opened the door wider and stepped aside. I walked into the familiar scent of her home, coffee and clean laundry, a smell that felt like calm. I stood awkwardly by the kitchen counter while she leaned against the opposite one, the space between us charged with unspoken questions. I took a deep breath. I thought maybe I was just the neighbor, I began, the words tumbling out. The guy who fixes things, someone you share a laugh with on the porch. She crossed her arms, listening. But I've been replaying the last 2 years in my head, I continued. I keep thinking about the time you brought me soup when I was down with the flu, or when you offered to walk my dog when I sprained my ankle. The late-night texts about nothing, the stupid jokes. I keep thinking maybe I missed something. A soft, sad smile touched her lips. You didn't miss it, Leo. You just didn't believe it. That hit me harder than a physical blow. I don't have a ring, I said, the words sounding lame even to my own ears. She tilted her head. Leo, I'm not asking for a proposal. I know, I said quickly. I'm just saying, I've never done this before. Not for real. She pushed off the counter and took a step closer. Me neither, she confessed. At least, not the right way. We stood there in the quiet of her kitchen, so close I could smell the faint, clean scent of her shampoo in her hair. She looked up at me, her gaze filled not with expectation, but with a profound, gentle patience. I don't want to keep pretending I don't feel something, I finally managed to say. Then don't, she whispered. I'm not great with big gestures. That's okay, she said. I don't need fireworks, just honesty. I nodded, a wave of relief washing over me. You've got that. I'm here because I don't want to spend another day of my life acting like you don't matter to me. A soft silence settled, comfortable this time. So, she asked, what now? Whatever you're comfortable with, I replied. A genuine, beautiful smile spread across her face. She turned, poured 2 mugs of coffee, and we sat on her couch, our feet in mismatched socks, the warm cups held between our hands like a truce. It wasn't a movie scene. There was no soaring music, no perfectly timed kiss. It was just 2 people, finally being honest. We talked for hours. She told me about pretending she needed help with a garden hose just to have an excuse to talk to me when we first became neighbors. We laughed, and it felt like breaking a fever. Later, we made grilled cheese sandwiches in her kitchen, and I burned mine, and she teased me mercilessly. It was simple, it was real, it was everything. When I left, she walked me to the door. Thanks for not waiting another 2 years, she said softly. Thanks for not slamming the door in my face, I countered. The days that followed were easier. The world hadn't changed, but my place in it felt different. We started building something, text by text, shared meal by shared meal. Dinner on the couch watching Seinfeld reruns, her leg casually brushing against mine, a small touch that spoke volumes. It was a language of comfort and quiet understanding. Then came Thursday. I texted her about coffee. She said she'd get back to me. She never did. The next day, driving home, I saw it. A sleek black SUV in her driveway. A car too new, too expensive for our neighborhood. And then I saw them, Clara and a tall, handsome man stepping out of her house. He said something, she nodded, and then he gave her a hug. It wasn't a stranger's hug, it was familiar. The old, familiar poison of insecurity flooded my system. My fingers tightened on the steering wheel. I felt that stupid, sinking weight in my gut, the voice that whispers that you were wrong, that you're not enough. I retreated back into my shell, into silence and avoidance. The knock came Saturday afternoon. It was Clara, still in her scrubs, holding a folder. She could read the doubt on my face before I said a word. "You didn't text back," she said, her voice neutral. "You didn't either," I retorted, the defensiveness sharp in my tone. "I had a crazy day," she explained patiently. "A nurse called out, I stayed over, and then my ex-husband dropped by." She held up the folder. "He's refinancing the house we used to own back when we were married." "He needed my signature on old paperwork. That's it." My silence was an accusation. "Leo," she said, her voice softening but firm. "Nothing is going on between us, but I need to be able to talk to you, to have a life without you assuming the worst. I can't build something with someone who hides every time they feel insecure." "You're right," I mumbled, ashamed. I mess up before I even get a chance to try, but I don't want to pull away from you." "Then don't," she said, setting the folder on my counter. She stepped forward and gave me a brief, warm hug. "Next time, just ask. It's so much easier than guessing." The folder sat on my counter, a symbol of her past, but not her present. I realized I didn't have to compete with anything. I just had to show up. Sunday morning, I found myself rummaging in my garage. I pulled out a small metal tin, and inside was a cheap silver ring from a pawn shop, a relic from a teenage romance I'd mistaken for love when I was 21. I put it back. Instead, I grabbed a small box of tiny brass hooks. I bought 2 coffees from the diner and walked to her house. She was on her porch, reading her phone. I handed her the hazelnut coffee, 1 sugar, just how she likes it. She smiled. "You remembered." We sat in a comfortable silence before I finally spoke. "I keep thinking about what you said," I started, "about not wanting to fix something by yourself. And I keep thinking how easy it is to convince yourself things don't matter, that people don't matter. But they do, you do." I opened my palm, revealing the brass hooks, offering them to her. "For your cabinet," I said. "The one under your sink keeps swinging open." A laugh, pure and beautiful, escaped her lips. "You're ridiculous." "Maybe," I shrugged. "But I'm here. I'm trying." She took the box from my hand. "You're not just trying, Leo. You're showing up. That's more than most." I looked her in the eye. "I'm not joking this time." "I know," she said. She reached out and laced her fingers through mine, her touch sending a jolt of warmth through me. "You're not getting out of helping me with that cabinet now," she teased. "I wouldn't dream of it." And that's how it began. Not with a grand, cinematic gesture, but with 2 cups of coffee, a box of cabinet hooks, and the quiet, steady promise of showing up. It was simple. It was honest. It was everything. Their story is a powerful reminder that love isn't always about fireworks. Sometimes it's about having the courage to fix a broken cabinet, to be honest when it's terrifying, and to simply show up day after day. What did you think of Leo's journey? Let us know by pressing 1 in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more hidden love stories.